Well, guys, not only is 2019 ending, but so is the 2010 decade. And I figured that to celebrate, I'd do what I always did at the end of the year for the past 3 years. Or has it been just 2 years? I don't know. I believe it was 2016 since I started doing movie reviews. Yeah, most likely 3 years. But anyways, I figured that the best way to end the year is to do the thing that, yeah, you were expecting and I said I'd do in my Mandalorian review. Giving you guys my list of the top 10 best and worst films of 2019, where I talk about the 5 films I liked very much and the 5 that I didn't at all. So yeah, let's get right into it. Steven Universe the movie. As someone who is a big fan of the show, I found the movie to be a genuine delight. There were just many things in this movie that I just loved very much. I liked how they called back to the first few seasons of the show whenever Steven tried to make the Gems remember who they were. Spinell is probably my new favorite villain, even though I was initially hoping that she would be an irredeemable villain, because admittedly, that is pretty much the only big issue I have with Steven Universe at all. Every villain gets a redemption arc. I mean, I still love the show, but I wish they would just give us an irredeemable villain for once. And yeah, recently, Future did kind of give us a bit of that with the return of Eyeball and Aquamarine in the episode Bluebird. But seriously, I wish they would just give us an actual threatening, irredeemable monster of a villain. Like, I don't know, like maybe like a Thanos type or something. But anyway, yeah, other than that, I loved her nonetheless. Spinell is great, as she's honestly the most tragic of the rogues gallery, as well as the cutest, might I add. And I just love the Independent Together song with the Stag fusion, where Greg and Steven fuse together to create Stag as they sing alongside Opal. That song may be my favorite song in the film. Sure, Other Friends is a great song too, but Independent Together just makes me feel so f***ing good, man. But yeah, the movie was great. Although I do find it kind of funny how Rebecca Sugar is actually willing to just straight up demonize Pink Diamond while redeeming her racist perfectionist family. But hey, surely enough, we can have high hopes that Future won't do that anytime soon. Right?
She didn't mean to hurt me. I just happened to be standing
Toy Story 4. Now, pretty much the only real big issue I have with Toy Story 4 is that, well, yeah, it does kind of kill the ending of Toy Story 3 when Bonnie did kind of promise to Andy that she would take care of Woody, but we find out in the film that she doesn't really pay any attention to him anymore, despite still being a little kid, which is kind of hard to ignore, as the ending of the film, where Woody says goodbye to the other toys to stay with Bo Peep at the theme park, does kind of make us imagine how awkward it would be if Andy were to stop by over at Bonnie's house and be like, "Hey Bonnie, where's Woody? Can I see him?" And they wouldn't be able to find him anywhere. Yeah, that'd be pretty weird to think about. But other than that, I still did love the movie. It gave us an emotional farewell to these characters whom we grew up with for a long time. Even kids who weren't around in 1995 will find this finale heartbreaking in a good way. But yeah, seriously, I loved many of the other things. Forky, he was great. Duke Nukem, he was awesome. I love how it gave more depth to the relationship of Bo Peep and Woody. I love the inner voice joke with Buzz trying to get advice from his voice box. Really funny. And yeah, I also like Ducky and Bunny. But yeah, I did love Toy Story 4. Sure, Toy Story 3 was better, but I did love this film too. It was emotional, and I love me some good emotional stories. Who doesn't? I mean, I'm sure we can all agree that this finale was definitely better than the Star vs. Evil finale, right? Shazam. As someone who usually is into the more dark and emotional superhero films, I think Shazam is one of the best examples of the opposite side of that done right. Not only is it funny, it was heartfelt too. Like seriously, Shazam wasn't just a dumb, stupid comedy with no soul in it whatsoever. It had great storytelling and even had genuinely intense scenes, along with some great emotional moments of triumph that would make anyone cheer like crazy. Zachary Levi and Asher Angel were both great as Billy Batson / Shazam. They were funny and also at times had some kind of genuinely badass moments too. Dr. Savannah was great. He truly felt like a dangerous man and even had a very well set up backstory. The family element with the other kids in this family Billy gets adopted into was great. It makes us feel for everyone even more. But yeah, overall, Shazam was just a fantastic movie. And I can't wait to see what is done with the second film as long as it doesn't ruin the magic of the first. Shazam is another piece of gold from the DCEU roster, as it truly earns its spot of one of DC's best achievements ever. Now, if they just release the Snyder Cut, we'll all be good. Avengers Endgame. Now, look, before Avengers Infinity War came out last year, I didn't always think of the MCU as this masterful franchise. I mean, yeah, I loved some of their films, but for the most part, I had mostly casual opinions on the series as a whole. But then Infinity War came out and made me love the series even more. And its sequel, Endgame, was even better. This film had just so many great moments, from Captain America fighting his past self, Captain America wielding Mjolnir, paying off on that one joke in Age of Ultron, Thor reuniting with his mother, Steve finally getting that dance, and as well as the scene that made me freak out the most, the Avengers Assemble sequence, with all the revived Avengers coming to help the Avengers fight against Thanos one last time. That was such an incredible sequence. And not only did this film have great action scenes, but it also gave some very satisfyingly emotional finality to the characters of Tony Stark, Natasha Romanoff, and Steve Rogers. Tony's, though, was what got me the most, with Tony snapping his fingers just as Thanos did, saying the quote that started the MCU from the very beginning, giving his life to save countless of lives, and being given a whole funeral with almost everyone he's influenced there. Even the kid from Iron Man 3 is there. Even Hank Pym is there. And Hank hates the Starks. I swear, this film was just another one of Marvel's genuine masterful works of art that surely enough will be remembered and viewed by other generations whose grandparents will certainly tell them the story of how they grew up with the series. Avengers Endgame was a great movie, and I loved every minute of it. Thank you, Russo Brothers. Joker. Look, guys, don't listen to any dumb controversy about how this film is going to influence rioters or be incel friendly or any of that bullshit. Those people are morons. Trust me, watching this movie is what you should do, because Joker is another one of DC's genuine masterpieces. Not only does it benefit from Joaquin Phoenix's brilliant performance, but much like Endgame, also has tons of great, memorable, powerful moments. From that scene on the subway where Arthur kills those three guys, starting his 12 into madness, becoming the Joker. The scene where it's revealed that Arthur's relationship with Sophie was actually all in his head the whole time. That scene where he practices being on the Murray Show. And of course the scene where he actually appears on said show. And of course that scene at the end where he literally puts a smile on his face with his own blood, with everyone who is inspired by him cheering for him and showing him that for the first time in his life, he is loved. And for the first time ever, he is genuinely happy. Every scene in this film is just great. This film is like the DC version of Logan. Joker was a great movie and it should be watched by everyone. Except kids. They should wait until they're older. And now that we've covered the hits, let's get into the bombs. Annabelle Comes Home. Now look, I was in fact intending on going to see this movie at some point, but like some other films this year, I just never was able to get around to it. So look, I'm sorry I didn't get a review of it last year. But anyways, look, while I do admit I did like this film a little bit better than The Nun, but it's still just a really lame and not very scary installment of the Conjuring universe. I mean, sure, it had good acting at times, and sometimes, sure, the film did look pretty eerie, but it doesn't have any real effort into the story or scare factor into it at all, like one of the good Conjuring movies do. And also doesn't work as a sequel to Annabelle creation at all. It's just kind of lifeless. Again, it's not the worst Conjuring spin-off, but it's definitely not one of the best either. Not in the slightest. I just hope that the third film in the main Conjuring universe is not only better, but also more legitimately good. As I also really hope that this new director, who's going to be replacing James Wan for this film, can give us an actually pretty scary movie. Like, what else has he given us? Oh no! Terminator Dark Fate. Look, as someone who grew up liking some of the Terminator films, I think these films have just gotten to the point where the franchise should just stop entirely. I mean, granted, the film had some decent things in it, but overall, it was a mess. Denny was an incredibly lame and bland protagonist. Like, she says she's gonna stand and fight, but in the final battle, she just stands around and doesn't do shit. The new Terminator villain, the Rev 9, had potential to be scary, but I didn't fear this thing in the slightest. Snoke was scarier than this guy. And yes, another reason this film sucks is because of the opening scene where they just decided to kill John Connor. Like, why did he have to die? What were they thinking? I mean, granted, it does give some decent development to this new Terminator, but what made them think this was a good way to do that at all? They could have done it in a different way. Killing John Connor also just straight up ruins the ending of Terminator 2. And apparently it was recently revealed that John Connor's death was James Cameron's idea, not Tim Miller's. Why? James, why would you do this? But seriously, this film is just a mess. It's another stale installment of a franchise that really should have ended when it was supposed to. And if those upcoming Avatar sequels are going to be anything like this, I think it'll be safe to say James Cameron is becoming the next George Lucas. Hellboy. No, not one of the good movies. Those came out in the 2000s. I mean the piece of god-awful reboot. Now, look, I swear to you, I'm not hating on this movie just because I was a huge fan of the Del Toro films. I swear, I'm not. I'm hating on this film because it was bad. Like, I was less as upset with the things that they did change from the books, like Grugok's backstory or those new powers they gave Alice Monaghan or whatever, than I was about the other things in this movie that just made me genuinely angry. The way they adapted Nimue was just terrible. By the way, in the film, yeah, they do pronounce her as Nimue, which, you know what, fine, to be fair, I'll give them that. That is a better pronunciation of the name. The amount of gore in this film is just an example of things from the books that should not be adapted into the films. David Harbour's performance, looking back at it, is actually even worse than I remembered. He sounds like a f***ing hillbilly most of the time. And the one big thing that they changed from the books that I actually was pretty angry about was Professor Broom. He was an absolute in this movie. And the only enjoyable part for me, at least, was the Lobster Johnson cameo. Like, if Del Toro were to have casted Thomas Hayden Church in the same role if he would ever finally make a third Hellboy movie with Perlman, that would be great. But instead, he's in this atrocious slog of a comic book film that feels more like one of those edgy macho films that only little kids that are fans of rock music, blood, and cursing will enjoy. Again, I'm not complaining because I like the Del Toro films better. I was glad that this film was going to take a different route. It's just that they did such a horrible job at doing so. Like, in the theater, I didn't even bother to see if there was an after credit scene. I just wanted to get the out. The Fanatic. Okay, look, before you ask, yes, I did see the movie because Chris Stuckman made a Hilariocity review on it, because I never heard about this movie beforehand, and when I saw his review, I figured, that movie does look pretty special. So I decided to watch it for myself, which was both a big mistake, but was also totally worth it. Because Chris wasn't wrong. The Fanatic is so bad, but so incredibly funny that you just kind of have to see it to believe it. John Travolta has given one of his most overacted performances that might be his best one out of that category. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I genuinely think it is. Like, his performance is so hilariously bad that it will most likely give you pathological laughter. Although, yes, the rest of the film is just absurd to a point where I can't even describe it. Like, if you've seen The Room and thought that film was insane, then you need to see this. Like, seriously, this film is But if you're afraid to watch it for yourself, then the least I could do is recommend you to just go and watch Chris Stuckman's Hilariocity review on it. It perfectly details how much of a hilarious atrocity it is. I'll add a link to his video in the description below. Cats. Do I even need to explain? So yeah, guys, that was my list of the best and worst films of 2019. And not only does this mark the end of 2019, but the end of the 2010 decade as we know it. And since I don't really have any real big plans on how to end this video properly, I figured that the least I could do is have a little tribute to some of those whom we lost this decade. I'm sorry. But, yeah, guys, let's hope we have tons of happier and great things to look forward to next year. Have a happy new year, and peace out.